death is hard for anyone, right? Whenever you lose somebody from your family or your personal relationship circle, it's hard, right? And when we are talking about a family business, it's not just a family member. It can be someone that has a role in the business or in the governance, or is central to making sure that all relationships are working, or that people are coming together and having complex conversations, or even a good moment or a good, I don't know, holiday celebration. So you have many different situations that the loss of that person are impacted. That's why it's so hard. So when you lose someone in your family business or anywhere, actually, it's common to feel feelings such as anxiety, stress, right? And a lot of those are due to the fact that you don't know what's going to happen, right? So having a plan in advance and putting some documents or some arrangements in place, that saves a lot of trouble and a lot of the stress that the family may face. For instance, I worked with two different families, very different situations. There was this lady, she was really special. And she started working with her offsprings in order to get her estate planning in place. She was going through that process, but unfortunately, she passed away. And since things were not final, her kids had to take over and make a lot of the decisions. The problem was that they had a very hard time dealing with the grief, dealing with the business, and all the decisions and the impacts of her passing. So it took them over a year to be able to move on, and the business was impacted, and not in a very good way. There was this very different family. I was working with the patriarch, very special person too, 80 years old, and he had everything planned. It's hard to plan for your own death, but he had his estate planning ready. He discussed his succession with his family, so his kids know who was going to take over his different roles in the family business. He wasn't in the board, he was in the shareholders council, and they had people not only to replace him, but actually to be able to carry on his legacy. So things were really in a good place. And when he passed away, the family could focus on the personal part of it. Like, let's celebrate his life. Let's make sure that whatever we learn from him, we are going to keep that alive. So they could actually go through the grieving process in a much easier and softer way, if you will. Absolutely. So he started talking to some advisors. He talked to his lawyers. He talked to a family business advisor. He even talked to his significant other before making the decision. Then he talked to his kids. And they had this process took about 2 years, but he was very open and very willing to discuss. And he told me, it's hard to face my own mortality, but I know it's going to happen, right? Of course, I'm going to work as much as possible to postpone it, but they have to be aware and they have to know what I would like them to do. Whether they are going to follow through, that's a different thing, but at least they know what I want. And in this case, they did follow through. And I guess everybody was in a better place due to that. And they could actually have their voice heard in advance, right? So nothing was a surprise. They knew who was going to succeed him on the board seat, for instance. It was clear. They had this opportunity to debate and see what made more sense. And even the person had the time to prepare for that, right? So that was the best example I've seen, right? Taking the time and doing it openly and getting people involved. the way I try to frame it is to look at it through 3 different buckets. The first one is the personal side, like, right? The person that passed away, he was or she was a family member. Okay, which are the roles that that person had? Was she a caregiver for someone else? Was she part of periodical meetings that the family used to do in a very informal way? Was he the one that would invite everyone over? Anyway, to think about the person and talk about the way that that significant person actually impacted everyone and go through the grief. So that would be what I call the personal bucket. Then there is the state one. So you have, if you don't have the estate plan done, some work will have to be done on that, right? There's no way to escape from it. And then there's the succession piece. It can be in the business, it can be in the family. So having those 3 pieces being taken care of takes time. But it's good to have somebody else to help. On the personal side, talking about the death and the person makes a difference. You can talk to a family member, to a therapist, to a friend, but actually talking about that person helps us process and calms our hearts, right? On the succession, it's good to talk to the people that are responsible for the governance in the family business and understand what is there, and probably talk to the advisors that the business has and see if there's anything planned, or if not, how the shareholders agreement points out what's going to happen in a situation like that. And again, talking to people that have more knowledge about that helps a lot. And then on the state piece, you have to talk to the lawyers that were involved on the estate planning. And again, if there wasn't one, then you have to deal with that anyways. It can be an accountant as well, but having some support is really key. The first one can happen in the family business or not, is ignoring the fact and not dealing with it. I've seen a family that has lost one of its members, and this was on Friday, and on Monday everybody showed up in the business as if nothing has happened. The problem is not that they were really good with that. They were not. Of course, they were impacted. It was very sudden. But by not dealing with it and talk about it, they just made it harder to be faced. So dealing with it is important. Each person is going to deal with it in a different way. Some can go faster, others may take more time. But it's important to face what is happening, right? There's no way to ignore it. And then making sure that everybody is on the same page. So we have estate planning. Let's make sure that everybody that is impacted by that knows what's going on. There's this succession plan. Let's share it with everyone so that there's no question about it. And we can plan to actually support it and have that desire of the passing person to be a successful succession, actually. And the last one, I would say, to support people, because everybody's going to deal with it in different ways. So especially for the people that are succeeding the deceased, they are going to need support for sure, because they will have big shoes to fulfill probably. So that would be the main 3 things that I can think about. In difficult times or in easy times, family business is a team sport. You have to work as a team. Especially in the hard ones, difficult ones, getting together is very powerful. So talking about the disease, talking about the plans, making sure that everybody's comfortable and understanding the decisions and how they are going to impact everyone. It's very powerful to do that in a united front. Second, there's no way that everybody can be involved in everything. So sometimes it's easier to, once we are on the same page, let's divide and conquer, right? Some people can focus on making sure that the family is in a good place, that people have the right support. Other people may be involved on the estate planning piece, and others can be just focused on the succession. So that's a good way to go. And then making sure that everybody's being heard and supported, and that no one is left behind is also an important piece. And sometimes you have to point out contact points, like this person is going to be responsible for this, that person is going to be responsible for that, so that in case of doubt or anxiety or anything, you know who you should turn to and ask for help or guidance or support. So the owner room, often after a situation like that, especially if it's unexpected, they do get together. It can be through a phone call or in-person meeting, and they try to map the impact. For instance, if that person had a leadership role on that council, that person has to be replaced, but you don't have to do it right away, right? But at least you know that's something you're going to have to do. But the owners council can also map the other impacts and how they are going to support the best way to go through those challenges. Sometimes you have to check the shareholders agreement to see how that death is going to impact everything. Maybe it's not going to have an impact. Maybe it may have some impact. So you have to check. And then the estate planning, again, if that's not in place, the owners council may have to support so that all the transferring happens in the best way possible. And then finally, the governance. The owners council is responsible for the governance design and implementation on a family business. So it has to make sure that the governance is going to be not negatively impacted by passing away. The way I like to think about that is to acknowledge all the positive things that that person has done in all aspects of their lives. It can be the business, it can be some community impact, it can be philanthropy, it can be mentoring some employees or family members. I'm sure they will find something to celebrate and to honor.